recording now. Okay, so folks, welcome to Why Weatherize. My name is Laurie Kozar. I'm the financial and energy coach for GreenSavingSmart at Capstone Community Action. We're really happy to have you guys here to join us today. We're going to do a little housekeeping before we get going. Folks will be muted in the meeting today while our presenters are presenting their information. We do want to take your questions, so if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them towards the end of the meeting. If you cannot stay for the entire meeting, do not worry. We will be recording this and it will be uploaded to a YouTube channel. You should be able to find that by going to our website, and I'll get that to you in a minute. This webinar is being produced by the team at GreenSavingSmart Financial and Energy Coaching Initiative. Today, we're really pleased to welcome panelist David Fisher, who is an energy coach with Capstone Weatherization in Central Vermont. We also have Jessica Williams, the Executive Director of Window Dressers. And Window Dressers, if you're unfamiliar with it, is a nonprofit organization, and they have a unique approach to help folks reduce their energy usage by producing custom fit window inserts. They're really quite handy. In the back of the house today, we also have Kelsey Gibb running our technology. Kelsey is our statewide team lead for GreenSavingSmart. Kelsey, thanks so much for helping out with this webinar today. Couldn't do it without you. Okay, so let me get to my slideshow here. Hold on a second, let me back out. I gotta hit share my screen first. A little technology oops here as I'm learning. Okay. And over to here. There we go. Okay, can you guys now see my screen? I can see heads nodding, so that's great. Okay, so why Weatherize? As I said, my name is Laurie Kozar. We also have David Fisher and Jessica Williams from Window Dressers. And let me just talk a little bit about the webinar. This webinar is being produced by GreenSavingSmart. This is an initiative that is part of a new pilot program that is funded by the legislature of Vermont, and it's managed by the Office of Economic Opportunity. The program is delivered through the Vermont Community Action Partnership. These are 5 regional community action agencies, and each have a financial and energy coach on staff to assist Vermonters with accessing the many rebates and incentives, as well as financial options that exist for energy efficiency. We provide informational and educational webinars like this, as well as providing income eligible Vermonters with one-on-one financial coaching, just to help people with building their financial capabilities and improving their credit scores, building their savings. So if you're interested in learning more about our program or enrolling, please make sure to make a note in the chat and we can get back to you, or you can just go to our website, which is greensavingsmart.org, and you can learn more there and enroll. Okay, so as I said, we have David Fisher, the energy coach with Capstone Weatherization in Central Vermont. David's an expert with over 10 years of weatherization experience, and he is going to speak to us about what weatherization means, how it works, who does it, and how to do it right. We also have Jessica Williams, the Executive Director of Window Dressers. Window Dressers is a wonderful nonprofit organization, and they help folks address an often overlooked component of the thermal envelope of a building, windows. And Window Dressers conducts wonderful community builds of window inserts throughout Vermont. They're also in New Hampshire and Maine. They produce custom built, high quality, low cost inserts. And together today, we hope to cover some of the ways to help you make your home more comfortable and energy efficient so you can save money and reduce the amount of carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels. Okay, so the title of this webinar is Why Weatherize? And I want to ask folks this, little interactive thing. What do you think the reason or the answer as to why Weatherize. Why Weatherize? If you want to go ahead and put that in the chat, and Kelsey can kind of, keep track of that. And while folks are answering, let's just quickly review what we mean by Weatherize. Weatherization is a process. It's a scientifically based assessment of a building and its parts, the attic, basement, walls, an assessment of the R value of the existing insulation. It also looks at how much air infiltrates the envelope, and it identifies where that air is infiltrating or exiting the building. Weatherization also addresses health and safety issues. Once you're sealing up a building, you want to make sure that you are taking care of important things like moisture, so you do not end up with black mold or radon or other challenges that exist in a building. So now that we have that definition of what weatherization is, and David, you can correct me if there's some other definition you would like in there, let's get back to why Weatherize and see what folks have answered. Now, Kelsey, do you have any good chat info there for us?
So we have to save money on heating and cooling expenses, decrease carbon footprint, make home more efficient. Let's see, save fuel and money, be more comfortable is something that a couple people said. So lots of great answers in the chat.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so this is, my brainstorm on why Weatherize. I put mine up here in this slide, and I see that matches up with a lot of yours, which is great. So David, I'm curious, in your opinion, working with Vermonters in central Vermont, what would you say is the #1 reason that people weatherize their building? Is there a #1 or #2 reason?
Sure, I haven't compiled them, but from experience, it's one of the first questions on our interview form, and it's usually save money, save fuel, their motivation.
Yeah, especially with fuel prices being what they are over the last couple of months, saving money on fuel is something I think that's on a lot of people's minds right now. So yeah. Well, a fun fact in Vermont is that many of the homes that I've been in have multiple heating systems. I'm sure that's a common experience for some of you. There's often a wood stove in one part of the building, something that one friend called an 8-arm Ursula in the basement, or a central hot air, forced hot air system. Some homes still have an old cook stove that's actually in use in the kitchen. And it would seem to indicate the Vermonters are a little obsessed with heating their homes. And that's probably with really good reason, because we have a lot of older housing stock in the state, and older housing stock means leaky doors and windows that don't quite fit properly. And we also have a lot of homes with inadequate insulation. So some fun stats for you guys. 43% of Vermont homes heat with fuel oil or kerosene as a primary heating source. And those are unregulated fuels. The price is whatever the market rate is, and right now it's very high. 16.5% heat with wood. And I'm curious with these stats, as I mentioned before, people sometimes have multiple heating systems in a home. Some people heat with utility gas, others with bottled or LP gas. Only under 1% heat with solar, which isn't quite shocking, really, considering that our winters are not so sunny. And 4.9% heat with electricity. But no matter what you're heating with, the financial reality is in our cold climate, folks spend a large portion of their income on heating their home. And as a financial expense, oh, so sorry, my phone's going off. That's not helpful. And as an expense, let me scoot down here and shut that down. Sorry, guys. Little fun with technology. Anyway, as a financial expense, heating your home is known as an energy burden. So little bit of fun with money math here. So an energy burden is basically the calculation of expenditure on energy expressed as a percentage of your total gross household income. So that's what you're spending to heat and light your home divided by your gross household income. And that number can be used in a number of ways. It can be really helpful in deciding how much you can afford to spend on a certain fuel and which fuels. It can help you also put into perspective why it's so important to undertake weatherization. And just to give you a hint, you could be saving money later by spending money to weatherize now. And that's, that's one of those calculations that you can do to see what you're spending. And when I work one-on-one with clients, when I'm working with a financial and energy client at the GreenSavingSmart program, we do a little bit of money math, and we will calculate their whole house energy burden. And sometimes when I say to folks, that we're doing math or a budget, folks get pretty nervous, but I assure you, it's a really simple calculation. And as I said, it's just the total amount you spend on electricity and fuel divided by your gross income. Now, statistically speaking, a high energy burden is considered 6% of your gross income. So that's, 6% of your electric and oil, or electric and pellets, or electric and cordwood, or electric and yak dung, whatever it is you're burning, divided by your gross income. And if you have a handle on your home energy expenses, if you're the sort of person that, writes out the check every month and you know what you're spending for your electricity and your oil, and you know what your gross income is, you could probably do the math in your head. And as I said, 6% is considered a high energy burden, 10% is considered severe. And by that, I mean that really impacts how much money somebody has to spend on other things. And we have a lot of houses in Vermont that actually are at 10% or higher energy burden. So regardless of where you may fall on that energy burden scale, if you're burning 6% or more to heat and light your home, you're spending more money on heating and lighting than is good for your finances, good for your environment, or good for your family. And so, question, that you might look at is, can I afford to weatherize if you're looking at your budget? And can I afford to not weatherize? And that energy burden calculation will come in handy there in trying to figure this out. And if you think of it another way, there's a well-known principle in financial planning. It's something called opportunity cost. And what that means is when money is spent for one budget category, there's less money available for another category. And so when we're analyzing that energy burden and undertaking a cost benefit analysis of investing in weatherization, you also have to put into that calculation in your head what opportunities that are being sidelined by the cost of your energy burden. So that might be saving for retirement, or saving for college, saving for vacation, or some other planned expense, or even putting money by for an emergency account. So hopefully in looking at that energy burden, if you're at 6% or higher, it will financially motivate you to invest in weatherization. So the question that folks often answer, or ask me after we come up with an answer of what their energy burden is how to afford weatherization. So there's a great program, and this is a great introduction to David and the weatherization program. So there are what are called WAPs, or weatherization assistance programs, and those are embedded within the community action agencies, as well as NIDO in the Northeast Kingdom, which is its own nonprofit, a slightly different model up in Northeast Kingdom. But basically what they provide is weatherization services to income eligible Vermonters for free, no charge. This is a national program. This isn't unique to Vermont, and it's targeted to low-income homeowners and renters. So if you're a renter and you're on this program and you're low income, your landlord would qualify for weatherization of their building. And this program is older. The WAPs were started in 1976. This was in response to the 1973 oil embargoes. If anybody is from the Carter administration era and remembers that, there were oil embargoes and fuel costs were rising like crazy, much like what we're experiencing the last couple of months in our current history. The goals of the weatherization assistance programs are energy conservation and healthier living conditions, and they provide no cost weatherization services to income eligible residents. The services will include energy audits, insulation and air sealing, heating system services for safety and efficiency, and even heating system improvements. And again, in Vermont, the services are provided through the community action agencies and NEDO in the Northeast Kingdom. So I don't, folks will ask me, well, do I qualify? The qualifications may be changing, and so I have it, and for the timeliness of this presentation that we're recording, I haven't bothered to put the income eligibility chart up here for the weatherization assistance program. That's a mouthful, because it may be changing depending on what federal funds are coming down. So the best recommendation I can give to you is to check the Department of Public Service webpage for weatherization services in Vermont. And Kelsey, if you could drop that in the link, the chat. That's a vermont.gov site, and it's through the Department of Children and Families, and that will direct you to your regional weatherization assistance program wherever you are in this state. So if you're not in central Vermont, don't fear, you can go to that site and that will help you get to where you need to go. And do check to see if you qualify for weatherization. And I highly, highly encourage, if you do, to apply immediately. It's a little bit of a long application, but usually they are very, very willing to help you apply if you need assistance. Sometimes there's assistance online or a phone call away, and you will need proof of income, and some other paperwork is required for that application. So you may need pay stubs or a tax return. But for those who are on this call and who don't qualify for weatherization assistance, there are a lot of other options, including generous incentives to hire a contractor. There are also state and federal tax rebates for investing in energy efficiency, and you should definitely check with whoever prepares your taxes for you. Okay, and so with that, let's move to the good stuff, what everybody came on this for. I appreciate your patience with the financial thing. I know it's not comfortable for everybody to talk about finances, but that's part of my job. So hopefully making it a little fun and entertaining for you guys. But now let's chat with David Fisher, Capstone's weatherization coach, and learn a little bit more about weatherization. David, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background with weatherization?
Sure, it's my pleasure to be here. I've been in this business for just about 10 years. Started through self-interest in buildings and saving energy. So I started reading books like this, Building Performance Institute guide, and ended up getting certified to be an auditor, and worked with some EEN contractors in the area, and went on to Efficiency Vermont, and then found my role as a energy coach here at Capstone, which is a great one because I get to do a lot of different things.
Great. Well, it's nice to have you. And the EEN contractors that you work with, just for folks who don't know that acronym, that's the Energy Excellence Network Contractors. And those are certified contractors who've been trained in weatherization of buildings. They look at the science of the building, and they are certified, and they can be found on the Efficiency Vermont website. So David, speaking of Efficiency Vermont, I recently learned that EVT, or Efficiency Vermont, increased the incentive for weatherization rebate, and that it's increased from 50% of the cost of repair up to 75% of the cost of repair. And if I'm not mistaken, that's up to worth up to $5,000. What is that like for folks who want to take advantage of that? Do you know like what that process is? And
sure. So that, that kind of is the next tier. If you don't qualify for the free weatherization, then you'll be in that category with income below their maximum for the moderate income incentive. And yeah, you have to use their very well laid out program of EEN contractors and incentives, and they all work together. So you do have to get an energy audit, use an EEN contractor, work with them, and complete the job, get the minimum requirements, and then you will get the incentive. And so that extra higher incentive up to 5,000 is for people up to an established income level slightly above weatherization.
I see. Okay. And so that you work with the EEN contractor, and I imagine that when you're submitting your claim to Efficiency Vermont at the end, you need all your receipts and invoices and proof of payment, such as a canceled check, to submit with that paperwork. Is that all about what you know?
Oh, yeah. Basically, they'll lead you the way through it. You don't have to do a whole lot on your own. As long as you're working in the program, they take care of you.
They help to guide the homeowners.
Oh, yes.
That's great. That's really helpful, because I think that's one of the things that I encounter with folks is that we have some really wonderful support programs in the state of Vermont in all sorts of areas, but sort of winding your way through programs and figuring out what you have to submit and when can be a challenge. So knowing that the contractor, the EEN contractor you're working with, isn't just performing the work at your home, but that they can really help you navigate the Efficiency Vermont rebate.
Yeah, they know the system, they know the requirements,
right?
They know how it works.
Right. So one really important piece that I know here is that the job, in order to get your rebate check back from Efficiency Vermont, the homeowner has to pay upfront for all the service at the beginning, or excuse me, it's not at the beginning, but at the end of the job. Yeah.
Works. Yes.
Yeah.
That leads to people to the financing options that you're probably going to mention, but yeah. You have to kind of foot the project and get reimbursed after.
Right.
Basic principle, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Efficiency Vermont also has some other handy online opportunities. Like I believe they have a virtual energy visit. And could you say anything about that? Like how does that play in with, sort of looking at what your job might be and how much work is needed? Are those virtual energy visits helpful or really informative?
I think so. I've never been part of one of those exactly, but a good way to find that is at the Button Up website. Button Up Vermont is a nice, easy way into all the weatherization and do-it-yourself offerings of Efficiency Vermont without having the distraction of everything else they do, which is a lot. So yeah, you can click and they'll contact you, and you can do a virtual energy audit with somebody who's pretty knowledgeable. And I'm sure they'll cover everything from electric to, whether you have insulation in your attic, things like that.
Well,
yeah, you can do that.
All those pieces. Awesome. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about sort of step by steps. What are the steps to a warmer home or weatherized home?
So kind of identifying how it loses its heat, which is an energy audit is the best way to do that. Doing it on your own is kind of hunt and pack kind of, but get an energy audit, and like it says, develop a scope of work. Most important things first, maybe break it into chunks you can afford, and cover health and safety. Then lay out a work scope of what exactly you're going to do, how much materials, where you're going to put them, how they'll be installed, and in a full program job project, it would be followed with a quality inspection as well at the end.
Right.
Make sure it was done properly.
Right. And I know that there's a lot of talk about, the scope of work in those energy audits, that they look at some of the simple steps that can be taken right through the more complicated ones. Could you just give us a quick, what are some simple steps that folks do, or
on their
that
own?
the contractor will do?
Yeah, I mean, just things like checking on make sure your door shuts tightly, install a door sweep. I mean, these are like do-it-yourself things. Have your heating system serviced, cleaned, clean your filters, lock your windows, batten it down for the winter.
Batten them down. I know those rattly old windows. I don't know if anybody else on the call has antique windows in their home. I do, and that's sort of an amazing thing to me, that there were no window locks when I moved into my home. So not only was it not secure, but in the wintertime when the wind blew, the windows would rattle and air would seep in. So yeah, that air sealing is important. So let me just pop over to ask you a little bit about energy audits. Can you describe what that is for somebody who's never had an energy audit? What is it?
Well, it's an overall checkup on your house in really vague terms, and it's analyzing the air leakage of your building envelope or your house. They measure it, with a meter and a big fan who pumps air out of your house to a given pressure, and allows them to gauge your house, how leaky is it, allows them to find the leaks, while the fan is blowing, you can tell where all the leaks are. They do an analysis of your heating system, combustion appliances. They'll even check a propane, range to make sure it's not putting out too much carbon monoxide as part of the health and safety. Measure exhaust fans, bath fans, any other exhaust fans you have to make sure they're pulling the right air, but also do not make your combustion appliance backdraft down the chimney.
Ah, yeah, that's key.
Important
I
thing.
imagine if you're making the building very airtight and you suddenly have turn on your bathroom fan or your kitchen fan at the same time, and it sucks the backdraft out of your wood stove. You end up with a nice backdraft. Yeah. Or more dangerous things like pilot lights going out. And so, okay. So what I'm coming away with from what you're describing is that once the building is made somewhat airtight, preferably up to a certain percentage of air movement through the building, that the temperature is better maintained in the building shell, that the cold air stays out and the warm air stays in, or vice versa, depending on the season. Is that kind of a reasonable summary of analyzing the air leakage?
Yeah, once you fix that air leakage and stop it from leaking in certain places, you'll have less cold drafts, you'll lose less heat, less turnover of the air in the house. You'll have to heat less air and you'll be more comfortable and save fuel.
Yeah, and sometimes I hear people talk about a building envelope. And can you speak a little bit about what that means, the building envelope? Like which parts of the building are the envelope?
So it's really the exterior shell of the house, the walls, the exterior walls, the roof, or very often the attic plane under the roof would be the end of the shell for the for that type of house, including the basement as well. So we tie most homes right into the basement, include that as part of the shell. And sometimes there's a misalignment of that shell where there's, a void and there's a wall to the garage that has no insulation, or there's air passageways through one way or another. And that's part of the corrections they'll make when they do a job on your house.
Right.
To
So
make that shell a continuous envelope around your house and align the insulation with it.
Right. And then, so when we're talking about that building envelope, we're looking at the parts of the building and how air moves through them. And you had supplied me this very nice slide on something called the stack effect. And it's a nice, unfortunately, it's a vertical slide. I tried to edit it to fit on the slide deck here. So sorry, folks, if this is a little hard to look at. It's all stretched out, but just trying to get the type as large as we could. But basically, it's the process of how air is moving through a building. And can you speak a little bit to that, David, about the stack effect?
It just looks like a wide house. So hot, buoyant air rises, as we all have observed, and it creates kind of a pressure and finds all the leaks up high in the house. And in return, cold air is pulled in through the leaks in the bottom of the house, and you get this kind of pumping effect of air turnover, cold air coming in and hot air escaping out the multiple leaks. And it just continues and continues, and you keep heating outside air as it comes in to replace the hot air that you've just lost.
Right, heating that outside air that's coming in through those basement leaks, because you're losing all the hot air out the top of your house. Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And it's like a chimney stack. Like when I first looked at this, I was thinking like a stack effect, but I think it's more like a chimney stack that the house.
That's two. Stack as in hot air stacked up higher than cold air, and also stacked like a chimney as it vents out of a house.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that's really informative and really powerful. So for folks who don't want to do a contract, or I suppose even if they do, just getting an overview, like for folks who might want to do a DIY project and undertake weatherization, as well as for folks who are working with a EEN contractor. Let's just kind of run through, some tips and tricks or advice of what's going to be going on with a weatherization project, or what somebody doing a DIY should look at. So you'd mentioned in a previous slide about health and safety, and can you speak a little bit to that? Maybe just go through these bulleted points on this slide.
Yeah. Sure. What we do is definitely make sure people have enough smoke and CO detectors for their house, depending on their sleeping arrangements and how many floors they have. The ones we have 10-year batteries now, and hopefully they will all be that way someday, because most people have one with a battery hanging out of it when you get to their house. So it's something we have to cover in each house to make sure they're covered with smoke and CO detectors. And maybe if you don't have any fossil fuel burning in your entire house, you might not need a CO detector, but generally everybody should have one. And the rest, cleaning your filters. Don't forget the dryer vent too. Very important. Dryer fires can happen, and the efficiency of dryers decreases with the amount of lint stuck in there. So that's kind of another health and safety point.
Right, especially if you've a gas dryer. That's
even worse.
Then that becomes a real. Then you might have your CO2 detectors going off if you've got too much lint in your dryer vent. Okay, and then so air sealing is something, it's not just about insulation, although insulation is really important, but we also have to look at air sealing, right? So that's that building envelope.
Like hand in hand. Insulating alone won't save you the most money, and air sealing alone won't either. Air sealing is almost more important because that's how you stop the air moving. But you still lose heat through walls and attics, so you need to insulate. They both need to happen. So air sealing means finding, cracks, holes, penetrations, voids, where you can install some sealer caulking, silicone caulking. It's usually what we use. Expanding spray foam in a can or two-part foam can use to be, seal an entire rim joist around your basement or an attic floor.
Right, right. With that spray foam, that stuff is kind of, I think the one brand's name is Great Stuff.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, and it kind of is great stuff because it's really, you apply it once and boy, it's on there.
It's messy.
Yeah. Okay, whoops, sorry, I'm jumping around here on slides. Sorry about that. Okay, let's, I'm gonna pop to the next slide. Oh, you know what, I'm so sorry. I would just want to mention Efficiency Vermont, for those of you who do want to do a DIY, Efficiency Vermont does have some nice one-pagers, and Kelsey will pop that. There's a DIY link for basement insulation. And it's a web-based PDF, and it has general recommendations and some handy links to follow about materials and so forth. So, and Efficiency Vermont also has some weatherization videos. And Kelsey, if you could pop those in the chat too for folks, how to insulate your basement video, or, get started on a home weatherization project. So those are some good basic tutorials that I find helpful in trying to understand exactly what's going on with weatherization. And another thing I've heard air sealing described as like the zipper on your coat. Like you have to zip up your coat. Like you could have a big puffy down coat, but if it's open and flapping in the wind, you're going to be cold. So you have your insulation, your down, or cellulose, rigid foam, whatever, but you got to zip up that coat with the air sealing. So I've heard that as a metaphor.
Right, like putting a windbreaker over your pull fleece vest.
Right, exactly. Can make a huge difference. So let's talk a little bit about R value and materials for insulation. Because there are different materials for different parts of the building and different building conditions. So the R value, as I understand it, is a rating system. And what does the R stand for, David?
It's kind of like resistance to heat transfer.
Yeah, I think that's a resistance. Yeah.
Any more precise scientific one?
Yeah, I think that's my understanding too. R is the resistance that a material has to temperature changes.
Right. So the higher that number, the more resistance it is to pass heat through it.
Right. And I think a key scientific word there is conduction. How much it can temperature conduction.
Exactly. That is for conduction.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, if I'm pulling it in right. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some of the materials, because not all materials are created equal. So can you just kind of go through the slide for our participants here?
Yeah, so cellulose is a papery, kind of made out of recycled newspaper, etc., with a fire retardant, and it can be used to blow in a whole attic very easily. Insulate an entire attic floor in an hour or two, and it can also be pumped into wall cavities and other enclosed cavities, and that's pretty much the limitations of cellulose. It's great, it's cheap. Easy to apply, and pretty green, and but it doesn't particularly air seal on its own.
Right, right. Well, it's the space between the fibers of cellulose that trap the heat. Right. And it's also treated with something to make it fire retardant.
Yeah, that's pretty much boric acid, I believe, borate, which is a fire retardant. Which, people also like that it repels rodents to some degree.
Yeah,
common in attics.
I'll admit that in my antique house, the mice found their way into the cellulose in the walls, and
I've seen
so
holes in cellulose. Yeah.
yeah, every once in a while I find little piles of cellulose, and they go, no.
Just can't beat them.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
and then the next product is something called rock wool. What is rock wool?
yeah, it's actually a mineral-based thing that it looks like fiberglass, a little denser, and you can get it in bats just like fiberglass. And they also make rigid boards of it, like foam board, so it can be used in either of those places to put into open wall cavities or ceiling cavities. It's more natural, not a petroleum-based. So it's a little bit more greener on the scale. A little bit higher R value than fiberglass too. So it's a really good product. People like using it.
Yeah, and it's also got that it's fireproof up to 2,000 degrees, which is,
yeah, you can blast it with flame.
Yeah, that's pretty. I looked at a video of somebody basically holding a blowtorch to a sheet of rock wool board, and just, you know, and nothing. It didn't catch fire. So, but yeah, one important piece there is to use a mask. I think that's also true with cellulose. If you're doing this,
yeah, very dusty.
Very
you
dusty.
should always wear a dust mask with pretty much any of these, because when you're cutting foam board, you got particulates coming off. And spray foam, you in large amounts, you really need a respirator.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. The guys that I've seen with the spray foam, like they're in Typar suits or Tyvek suits with respirators, and they have fans going to blow out. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get to spray foam down there, which is a little, you know, the fact that people need respirators and Typar suits, I think says a lot about what we're dealing with better living through chemistry. But let's talk a little bit about foam board.
So yeah, you can buy it in variable size sheets and thicknesses. I wouldn't recommend using 1-inch foam board on much of anything, because it's just not going to get you much R value. So, but basically that stuff is about R5 per inch. Typically we use 2-inch sheets to do things with. Good for in basements where it might be damp, the foam won't be affected much. And good for air barriers, like, you know, your attic, your basement bulkhead entrance that you want to seal off.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my slide, and I see that there's actually a mistake on this slide, folks, and I apologize for this. The foam board says it's from both basalt rock or volcanic rock. That's not true. That's the rock wool.
No, it's really a petroleum-based foam, like styrofoam.
It really is. And I know it also comes, so there's pink board, there's blue board, there's a foil-backed foam board.
There's a new one that's gray, which has a lower impact on the environment.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. And then, so here's an interesting aside. I knew some folks who had installed a foam board, do not know which one, but they ended up with insects nesting in it and consuming it. And to speak, why would something consume foam board? And just as a fun fact, I had some sheets of foam board down in under my barn in storage, and my chickens had gotten in and they ate a corner of the foam board. They pecked at it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think it tastes sweet. So that's just, don't let your chickens near the foam board, whatever you do. And I can only say that in Vermont, you know, because a lot of people keep chickens. So, okay. So, and sorry guys, I'll not make this personal about me, but so back to our spray foam. I think you mentioned before, great stuff, and that it easily fills gaps.
Very easily. Yeah. Comes in small cans. Bigger projects, you get the froth pack with it too, like barbecue sized tanks that are combined to make a spray foam. That's what our crews use in rim joists and attics. But the kind you can buy, they sell it in expanding foam that expands a lot. So you can fill like large holes, or you can get stuff that's meant for little cracks around a pipe or a seam. And then you can get one that doesn't expand much at all for around windows and doors.
Right, right. And that's some of the downsides of working with that spray foam, whether it's, hiring a contractor to come in and do the spray foam for you and, do your basement, walls or your attic. And I've also seen people drill holes and then spray foam into the wall cavities of the outside of a building. But, it's petrol based and it outgasses. So you have to be out of the house for, I think it's something like 24 hours until it's cured. So yeah, so spray foam is an interesting product for sure. Better living through chemistry. Okay. And so final, we talked about air infiltration, and you had given me these tips the other day, of things that people can do at home, for their own house, the small DIY projects, depending on your skill level. So making sure your storm doors fit properly, or replacing that stripping around the storm door, installing door sweeps, filling old utility holes. I had a utility hole in where the electric used to come into the foundation, and it was replaced before I owned my home. And one 27 below day, I went down to my basement wondering why it was still so cold down there, and noticed this pipe for the first time just sticking out of the wall. And I put my hand up to it, and it was 27 below air being piped in through an old utility hole. direct from the Vermont night air coming right on in. Cellar doors also, or bulkhead doors. You can even buying a 4x8 sheet of rigid insulation and tacking that up over your cellar door to make it more insulated can really make a difference. And plugging those cellar windows.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so just in summary, like for contract work, a checklist to go through for finding a contractor. And one thing, David, I didn't ask you about, but just in your experience, like, can you give us an average weatherization? Like, what generally is a weatherization project run on a building for materials? I know the weatherization program doesn't charge for this, but generally there must kind of be a cost associated with about what amount of services is provided in a weatherization of a building.
Well, there's they quote that there's about a $10,000 benefit of materials or value added to your house through weatherization. Mm-hmm. That's through the weatherization assistance program. So I think, the average cost of a project, on the free market, we're talking, in the lowest end, like 2,500 up to 10,000 or more.
Right. And I imagine that depends on how, labor. How large your house is, how much insulation you're doing, where you're doing the air sealing and things like that. I imagine that those all could add to the cost of a job. And one other thing that I know is that the weatherization is a little bit backlogged. There was a lull there during COVID when there weren't a lot of weatherization projects going on in houses. I think at least that was in the Northeast Kingdom. I know Nido was looking for homes where that people were willing to have them come in. So I know now that it's taking a little bit longer to get into the service stream for weatherization services. I also know that efficiency contractors or EEN contractors are a little bit backlogged. And so if you're seeking weatherization, be patient. It'll be worth the wait. it really will. And, you know, make certain that you're setting yourself up, that you check with your tax professional to find out what you can deduct in the meantime. You know, if there's small projects that you can undertake on your own, like the door sweeps and weather stripping, you know, those things you can start to tackle now, depending on how your comfort level is with doing some contractor work. So David, any last thoughts here?
Yeah, we just to add to that, like, yes, our lag time has gone up several months, you know, this year. We hope to get caught up and bring that back down a bit. I don't know how the EBT contractors are doing. I'm not really directly involved with them, but yep. One big word of advice is, like, you can hire an insulator. You know, Joe's Insulating Company. There's many famous ones around Vermont. But beware that they don't always do an energy audit or keep your health and safety in mind, and that an energy audit is really important if you're going to go big with weatherization.
Right. And if you want that 75% rebate back, it has to be a certified EEN contractor that you're working with. So before you just jump in and hire somebody because they're available, just you know, yeah. And comparing materials, that's really important. Look at the materials, look at what somebody's suggesting to you, make sure that it aligns with your values and your comfort level. You know, the spray foam is certainly way more insulating and air sealing, but there are downsides to it. It's not as green as other products. The propellant isn't great for the atmosphere. Be sure to get yourself estimates. And if the job looks like it's, you know, like $10,000 is a terrifying number, unless, you know, you have an Aunt Tilly who passed away and left you, you know, a couple $1 million. $10,000 is a chunk of change for many of us. And, you know, so consider pacing or stages of your project or some other things. Yeah. So, well, David, this was really fun. Thanks for chatting with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, really fun. Okay, so, and I want to say, you know, for folks, you know, I know David and I just talked about like 2,500 to 10,000, depending on the scope of work, depending on your building, depending on the materials used. So I feel responsible to share with you some financial stuff. Don't leave money on the table. There is money out there. So there are green energy loans or heat saver loans. These are low interest loans relatively. I know interest rates have been creeping up with the feds jacking up the interest rates. But that said, VSECU, the State Employee Credit Union, Opportunities Credit Union, North Country Credit Union, NeighborWorks, and other financial institutions do have green loans or heat saver loans. The financial institutions are really trying to get on board with this and help us all move towards energy efficiency. And then there are other tools out there. USDA has a home repair loan. I think that caps out at $40,000. If you're 62 and up, there are grants up to $10,000. And I think those are called the 504 Home Repair Program loans and grants. So check them out. We have a really nice USDA contact, Anthony Capone, who is willing to take your calls and help you walk through it. There's a local sort of a coordinator for USDA home repair loans. They'll come and help you with the application. It is a dense application, I forewarn you, because it is the USDA, and there are a lot of guardrails on it to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do, because it is a low interest or zero interest loan for income eligible people. So there's some guardrails on it, but check it out. So the 504 Home Repair Program. There's also home equity line of credit. Home equity lines of credit right now, the interest rate's a little bit high, but worth checking out with your lender and see if they'll work with you. You're improving your building. you know, if they hold your mortgage, a local bank, you may be able to work something out with them, or adjust the terms of your current mortgage. And don't forget tax incentives. Always talk to your tax professional. There may be energy efficiency improvement incentives through state and federal taxes, and those are always worth checking out. They do change. I cannot stay abreast of all of them. I wish I could, but that's not my job. That's why we have tax professionals. Okay, and with that, I get to introduce window dressers. Jessica is here, Jessica Williams. Let me give quick fun facts to introduce this. I'm aware of the time. We're close to 4 o'clock, and I want to leave time for Jessica to do a good presentation for you on windows, and also take your questions at the end. So windows lose more heat per square foot of area in winter and summer than any other surface in your home. That's shocking, especially if you have those single pane, simple glass windows like I have in my home, the 1/8-inch thick glass that's wavy, it's beautiful, but it has a very low R value or resistance value. So if it's cold outside, and I put my hand near that window, it is bleeding cold air in, transmitting that through the glass. Glass is a great conductor. So even if your walls are well insulated and you have an R value of 13 to 19 in your walls, windows have a poor R value. Even double glazed windows, even argon glass windows, there's still heat escaping through the windows, and it defeats the purpose of having a well insulated wall. Unfortunately, actually, I don't want to say this, Efficiency Vermont does offer an incentive, but not for window replacement. Window replacement is really costly, and unless there are health and safety issues, it's difficult to find a low interest loan for window replacement. USDA might be something you could go towards with that. So again, health and safety and income eligibility and a bunch of things would need to be in place there, but worth looking at. That said, the great news for those of us who don't want to replace windows in our home is we have Window Dressers. Window Dressers is a nonprofit organization. They have a unique approach. They do community builds all over the state of Vermont. And these are community builds that volunteers can participate in. If you are getting windows through it, you get to participate, you get to help build the windows, and they're custom made for your windows. And this is throughout the state of Vermont. Window Dressers is also in New Hampshire and Maine. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Jessica. Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Laurie. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to get my slides up here. Can everybody see that all right? All right, well, thank you, Laurie and David also, and Kelsey for having me. I'm going to try to move kind of quickly because I know we're at 4 o'clock or just past. So, so what is Window Dressers? Our mission is to bring community volunteers of all economic and social situations together to improve the warmth and comfort of interior spaces, lower heating costs, and reduce carbon dioxide pollution by producing low-cost insulating window inserts that function as custom interior mounted storm windows. So what is Window Dressers? So we're a volunteer-driven organization. We have community builds that are run by, organized by local community volunteer teams. So Window Dressers supports and trains and supplies all of these teams with everything that they need to be successful. Our inserts are available to everyone. So we do have a low income component to our program where we provide roughly 25 to 35% of our inserts go to low income households, but they are available to everybody who, whether you can pay full price or for free. So we can only serve communities or individuals where community build teams form and agree to lead a build. So we're always looking for organizations or leaders in the community that want to step up and organize community build. So windows are great as, whoops. Yeah, okay. We, like I said, we do reach 25 to 35% of our inserts go to low-income households. If you are low income, we don't have a specific qualification and income qualification structure. It's sort of about creating relationships with people and having conversations about what their financial situation is and what they can afford to pay. So folks can get up to 10 inserts for free or for whatever they can afford to pay. And they can come back year after year. So if they've got 20 windows, they can get 10 the first year, 10 the second year, and so on. So our goal is to really make energy efficiency as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. And the inserts are funded by a mix of locally secured grants by the local teams and grants that Window Dressers secures and donations. So windows are great. They're good, obviously, for letting in the light and the views and the fresh air when the weather was good. But the fact is that windows are responsible for about 25 to 30% of residential heating energy use. So you lose a lot of energy through your windows. You're throwing money out your windows if they're not well insulated. So that's where Window Dressers comes in. We build high quality, low cost, attractive insulating window inserts. So when you install an insert, you get at least 2 additional insulating air spaces. So if you have a double pane window, you're going to have three air spaces. But if you have a single pane window, like Laurie was talking about, you're going to get an additional 2 insulating air spaces if you install a window insert. So there's the space between the insert and then the space between the 2 layers of plastic that make up the insert. And if you have a double pane window, that's the third insulating airspace between of glass. So they reduce drafts, condensation, and even street noise a little bit. So just increasing the comfort of the space in which the inserts are installed. We have teams of measurers who will come to the home and measure the windows, so you get a custom fit guaranteed. They're removable and reusable for essentially indefinitely. If the plastic rips or breaks, we can rewrap the plastic for a small fee, but the frame is reusable. So, but with proper care, the plastic should last between 5 and 10 years without having to be replaced. And they're a lot of fun to make. So they're great. So compared to a lot of other options out there, obviously window replacement is very expensive. There are other companies on the market that make similar products, but they are much more expensive than what we do. And I think we keep our costs low. Participation of the so everybody who gets the inserts is asked to participate in the building of them. So that's how we keep our costs low. So an average insert for a window of about 30 by 52 inches is about $44. So, and what we call these Indo windows for an average insert is $313. So it's a real big difference in cost. So the inserts help you save money. About a gallon of heating fuel or equivalent for every square foot of window. So that can be a significant savings. So the inserts usually pay for them in about 2 heating seasons. I think I need to update this slide a little bit because the cost of heating fuel has gone up so much, but they really do pay for themselves very quickly. And as Laurie mentioned, the Efficiency Vermont DIY rebate is available to those who get at least 3 inserts. You can get $100 rebate, which is great. makes it even more of a bigger value. So this is just an interesting photo comparison of a building before and after it's been weatherized and with inserts in place. So the red, the photo on the image on the left shows windows that don't have inserts in them, and the photo on the right shows windows with inserts in them. So I have inserts in my home, and even in new construction where you've got, relatively high quality double paned windows without the inserts. When it's cold outside, you put your hand on the glass of the window and it's cold. With an insert in place, if you put your hand on the plastic is room temperature. So you're not really having that the conductive heat loss or the convective heat loss without the inserts in place. So this is just an illustration, a photo showing the inserts in place. They look really nice. That's the attractive factor. So our community builds are really about building community. It's really at the heart of what we do. So we see this during the week-long effort that is the community build. We're all built. And we rely not only on the customers to participate in the effort, but also on other volunteers within the community coming together to help out. So local businesses often get involved as well by either sending groups of volunteers or donating food for the volunteers. So it really becomes a community effort all the way around. Local organizations also are really helpful with conducting outreach. So spreading the word about our program and getting people to sign up, and especially low-income folks who may not really be aware of our program or think that it's for them. So it's really, like I said, it's really a community effort. And again, the participants most of the participants are customers who are getting the inserts, and it's a really empowering experience for a lot of people. If they say, oh, I'm not handy, I don't know how to build anything. We have set things up to make it very easy for folks to do each of the steps involved in assembling the inserts. So it really becomes a very empowering experience for folks to be able to say, oh, I built something today, or I learned something new, or people working together who would not have otherwise met each other, having conversations and realizing that they have things in common. So again, that's the community building aspect of what we do. That's it. Quick overview. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. There's also a link here. If anybody is interested in starting a community build in their community, there's a document linked to a sort of a how to get started document, or you can reach out to me with any questions or with interest about starting a build, or how you can get inserts.
That's great, Jessica. Thank you so much. I can't say enough good things about window dressers. I was introduced to window dressers a couple of years back by Heat Squad when I was working with them on my building weatherization project. And when they first said window dressers, I just thought, well, I don't need curtains. That's not, I could deal with curtains on my own. But then when they described what it was, and I love the community build project aspect of it. I love that you're building community, and can't say enough good things about it. And they really do look beautiful. So I'm signed up for getting window inserts for my home, and I'm looking forward to that because I have leaky, drafty windows, and it will be so good. And so window dressers, www.windowdressers.org.
That's right.
So that would get you to their website. I did see in the chat somebody asked if the community builds only exist in Vermont. So I'm guessing we have somebody from across the river or someplace further away on this call. Where is your territory, Jessica?
So our territory is Northern New England. But primarily, so we started in Maine, and we've got a lot of builds in Maine. We've got a lot of builds in Vermont. We've got a couple, actually we've got 2 in New Hampshire, one in Keene and one in North Conway. And then we've got one in Barre, Massachusetts. So we're starting to expand. It's just, we've had a lot of success with the network of energy committees in Vermont. So they've really taken it up. But we're always looking for new groups to start a build, because as I said, we can only serve customers in communities, within the vicinity of a community build. So
right. So the energy committees tend to work with window dressers. If you don't know who your town energy committee is or who's on it, reach out to your town clerk and they can put you in touch. There's a whole network of energy committee members throughout the state of Vermont. If your town clerk doesn't know, you can also try your regional planning commission. They can put you in touch with folks who can also guide you on those sort of energy efficiency questions, and get involved. If I can encourage folks who are on this call, get involved. If not just for your own sake, but it's really important that we all kind of lean in and do our best to reduce our fossil fuel consumption. We have these crazy weather events going on, and I just think if we can really reduce that energy usage, we'll all be in a better place. So I'm not sure that there are other questions that folks have. The chat looks a little quiet for questions. So I think if folks have questions now, please, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll try and address some of those for you. Yeah, I don't see any. Come on, guys. You could put questions out there. Jessica, maybe you have questions for folks, or do you have a list of community builds going on in the state of Vermont?
Yeah, the list is on our website. I don't have any, so again, if you go to our website and you click on community builds, there's a tab for Maine, and a tab for Vermont, and then a tab for Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
Great. So folks can navigate there. And I see a question came in. Are the inserts also beneficial in summertime?
They certainly can be. So if you cool your house, if your house is air conditioned, then it'll definitely have a similar effect keeping the cool air in. We do say that you need to be a little bit careful with south-facing windows, because the south-facing windows that get a lot of direct, intense summer sun, that just can cause the plastic to degrade more quickly, but they certainly do work in the summer.
Sure, that would make sense to have that air pocket to keep that extra insulation in there. Yeah, so for folks maybe who are switching over to heat pumps, and who currently don't have cooling opportunity, but I could see that being really helpful. I know when I was a kid growing up, my grandparents used to switch over to white curtains in the summer to reduce the amount of sun coming in their south. There's this so passive solar house. The solar gain in the summer was not as desirable as it was in the winter. Yeah, so somebody's asked, is a carpentry site necessary for window dressers?
Well, so a carpentry site specifically is not necessary. We do, for the community builds, the teams do need to find a site in which to hold the community build. So if that's what you mean, then yes. But the wood that the inserts are made of, that the frames of the inserts are made of, it comes all pre-cut and pre-drilled. So we send all of the screws and the glue and everything else that's needed to assemble them So there's very little cutting or so that needs to happen. So some of the windows, if they're taller than 48 inches, then they need a strut, like a horizontal strut, just to stabilize them. And the teams will use a little handsaw to cut that. So, and I'm just seeing that the space that we recommend, the minimum space is 30 by 50 feet. So 30 by 50 feet, so that you have space to spread everything out. And yes, you can go to the website to apply for inserts. You just click on the request inserts tab and fill out a form, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, and I think some of the builds that are going on around me, if I'm not mistaken, are either at the community centers or at school, gymnasiums and that sort of thing. So that sort of large-ish space, I imagine, is really helpful for doing these builds.
Yeah, and it needs to be a space that you can basically have dedicated to the community build for about a week, so that you can set up everything and leave it set up for that entire week.
Okay.
Yeah,
I imagine that could be a little challenging in some of our Vermont communities where we use the same building for town, town business as we do for the gymnasium.
Right.
But I'm sure those spaces can be found. Let's see, any other questions we got here? Carpentry space. Would insurance for the site owner be an issue? It's an interesting question.
We provide a certificate of insurance for the spaces that are used.
Yeah, and usually with public sites, like town gymnasium or schools and things like that, there generally are some sort of insurance liability waiver thing that the town will manage. So if you're interested in hosting a build, again, reach out to your town energy committee or your town clerk and help start moving that forward so we can get more of these. Great. Well, I'm looking at the time. We're at 4:20. We've had a couple people pop off, and if anybody else has any other questions, we're happy to take them. We're going to be posting this recording or link to it on our website. When we finish the presentation, we will also send you a follow-up email with some of the some links in it to some of the things that we discussed today, so that you'll have a record of that. I hope you found this a helpful webinar to participate in. And if I still have, let me see if he's still on here. Ah, he is. Maybe I could invite Paul Zabriskie, the director of Weatherization at Capstone, just to say a few words about his program at Capstone. Paul, would you care to unmute and share a few words with us?
About weatherization.
not to put you on the spot, but it's a great opportunity for your face to get out there. So Paul Zabriskie has been the director of Weatherization at Capstone and the super brain around all things energy efficiency, and we're so lucky to have him on. So Paul, anything you'd like to share about weatherization?
Well, I think you've covered it pretty well. I mean, there's a ton of resources. It can be hard to untangle them. And I think GreenSavingSmart is there to help people navigate that information, fire hose of information, and really pick and choose what are the pieces of all that menu of options that put together the best solution for a particular household. So I think the challenge in Vermont housing stock is there's no two homes that are the same, and there's no two households that are the same. So you end up with custom solutions, and that can be really challenging. So trying to put the resources in place to help people navigate that. The alternative would be trying to streamline everything, and that ultimately constricts all of these moving parts from evolving in their particular sector. So anyway, take the first step is what everybody has to do, because that's the first step leads you to the second, and you just have to get moving.
Thanks, Paul. That's really great insight. So nice to have you on. And I'd like to thank our panelists again, David Fisher and Jessica Williams from Window Dressers. And thank you, participants, for being on. This was a really fun webinar for me to put together for you. If you find that you'd like to talk with GreenSavingSmart, talk about your budget, that is my job. I'm so happy to do that. There's a coach at each of the community action agencies that can work with you. If you go to www.greensavingsmart.org, you will find us, and you can apply for our program. And just really happy to do this sort of presentation. Kelsey, thanks for dropping our greensavingsmart.org website in the link. And stay well, everybody. Stay cool. And thanks again. We're gonna pop off here and wish you all a good afternoon. Thanks.
Bye.